Afternoon of day two. Hopefully we've still got a little bit of energy left. Awesome. It's actually a little bit surreal standing here talking about AI in marketing because 12 months ago I was very much a skeptic. I didn't really understand AI, I didn't really see the opportunity, and I didn't know how much it was going to impact my career and my life. The last 12 months I've been on a journey of rapid adoption, learning. I've been in a good position to do that, and today I really wanted to share some stories about my journey which hopefully will give you some ideas, some insights, and hopefully some inspiration to go and test and learn and do some things yourselves as well. Now it's a pretty bold statement here. I'm sure we've all felt the impact of AI in one way or another. We're maybe a little bit tired of hearing about AI. Hopefully I'm not another one of those presentations that's boring and just hype. I want to get a little bit more into the how and the why. But I'm sure everyone knows what ChatGPT is. Sam Altman is the CEO of the company that has created ChatGPT, and he thinks 95% of all marketing will be done by AI. Now, I agree with this statement mostly. We could probably talk about 95% whether it's that much, but when you think about marketing, there's so much of what we do that's structured, it's process-driven, it's repeatable. And why can't machines do a lot of the work? But I think it's finding the divide between human and AI and intelligence. That's the key. Now, Scott Brinker, another quite wise man in the market, he works for HubSpot and he's got a publication called Chief Martech where they basically go and analyse all of these technologies in the marketing and the advertising space. And he says that AI is going to be, or is, the biggest wave that's happening in all of our careers here in marketing. Again, I completely agree. But I think this wave is definitely more of a tsunami, and for those that think it's coming, it's not coming, it's absolutely here. So I think the trick is just really finding out the best way to swim, depending on where you are in your business. So why listen to me? Again, I said that I've been put in a good position to sort of learn and adopt the technology, and I've done that. The reason why that's happened is there's a few reasons. So, firstly, I work for a marketing technology business, XPON. We essentially do a bunch of services around data, technology, predominantly helping enterprises and corporate businesses make the most out of their investment in data technology, specifically around marketing and media. So, everyone in the business kind of has a mindset around marketing, technology, AI, which is very complementary and it helps. Secondly, you would have heard Google Cloud mentioned before. We partner with Google Cloud really closely. They drive, obviously, a lot of AI innovation. They've got the Gemini, LLM, and a bunch of other tools built on that infrastructure. And as a partner, we get sort of first-hand exposure to what they're doing, some of the innovations before it's in public release. We get invited along to events and news and all this stuff, which just gives us a little bit of a front foot ahead of the rest of the market. And then probably the most important thing is XPON went through a bit of a reshuffle about 18 months ago. I used to have a team of about 4 or 5 people, and then all of a sudden I was a solo marketer. Now, the change happened in the business was around the structure, not around the KPIs and the requirements. So I still had to hit targets and achieve things from the marketing function. So for me, it was about figuring out how can I lean into this and how can I make it work for me and get value. Now, this is a pretty poorly generated image of, this is supposed to be me, by the way, thanks to ChatGPT. But I've told this story a few times, and I genuinely believe this one meeting I had changed my life. So there's a guy on our board, his name's Jamie, and amazing guy. But after the restructure that I mentioned, Jamie gave me 30 minutes of his time, which was amazing. Getting 30 minutes with a board member is pretty important. And when he first told me, I've been on a 2-year sabbatical. I've just come back. All I've been doing for 2 years is learning about AI and studying LLMs and trying to understand the nuances and the complexities and the differences and all these things. And first I was like, okay, it's a very interesting way to spend 2 years of your life. But then I thought, okay, this guy's going to obviously know a lot, be really intelligent. I should probably lean into this and try and get as much as I can out of his brain. So that 30-minute meeting turned into 3 hours. It was a Thursday afternoon, and it felt like one of those scenes in a movie where there's a hacker and they're like jumping in between different windows and typing vigorously. And like I'm on the other side of the screen, like jaw dropping, a bit of drool coming out of my mouth because it was just like mind blowing. This meeting was insane. We started off, he asked me, what's something you're working on at the moment? What's a key project? For me, I was building a content plan for the quarter that was coming up. I'd spent about 2 hours on it, like I was just at the start. And within 15 minutes, he'd basically completed the project for me. He took what I'd done already. He took all of the content we'd produced in the past to get sort of style, tone of voice. He took the goals and the KPIs and the content pillars and all this stuff to build out a really beautiful 3-month content plan with all the distribution channels, all the strategies, all the why, but also all the timelines and the how on how to execute it and the resources involved. Then we went a little bit deeper and he showed me how you could do financial and business analysis using an LLM by looking at an annual report and spreadsheets and profit and loss statements, all those sorts of things, which again was a use case I'd never thought about and I'd never looked at before. And then we did some really interesting stuff and we did like situational analysis and psychoanalysis based on my like verbal replays of a sales meeting that I was in with a prospect earlier that week, so that we could sort of personalize and tailor the way we presented our solution back to not only the business based off their different parts of the industry and whatnot, but also the individual based off our psycho eval of them and the things that they said in that meeting. So just some like mind-blowing different use cases which really like fundamentally changed how I thought about AI and thought about the possibilities. So I think it's interesting to reflect on this stat because I'm sure a lot of people in the room are probably feeling like how I did before that meeting with Jamie, where a little bit curious, a little bit unsure, a little bit uncertain of the opportunity. And I think most of the market is still there. The 1%, this is kind of what we're seeing at XPON. This is generally like, there's a very few that we work with that are in this space, but this is the enterprise where they've got proper business functions. They're investing heavily into AI. They've got a CAIO, yeah, I think that's right, CAIO, and governance committees. Nothing screams innovative technology like a governance committee. But like this is where the leaders are, and this is what's happening, which is pretty unattainable for small and medium. But hopefully, like again, I'm in a small business technically. What I'm going to share is like some ways that you can start to drive that adoption. Again, when we look at the medium-sized and the large businesses we work with, there's very few. I was at a conference yesterday in Sydney, the Google Cloud Summit, and Macquarie Bank. They were the standout. They were talking about everything that on that last slide and all the things they were implementing, the processes and the technology. But they are definitely a unicorn, and they're quite agile as a large business compared to most. And all the other businesses that we're typically working with, again, generally in that higher end of town, there's 3 sort of common challenges. Apart from education and skepticism, you find that less and less maybe in the larger enterprises, but there's 3 sort of common challenges, and I like to just share these because I think they're important to look at when you're thinking about your own business and how to apply this. But strategy is a big one. They don't know like the way forward because it's so new and there's so much innovation. They don't know how to adopt it at scale. Like they might be able to adopt it here and there, but then to scale it across the business and derive value long term is a constant challenge. The data's a mess. You may have heard the adage that good AI requires good data, and that is absolutely true, especially when we're talking about keeping first-party data and first-party technology inside your infrastructure. If your data's a mess and it's siloed and it's all over the place, you can't really filter it through an AI and get good results and then make it accessible to team members. And then tech stacks are convoluted, and I think most businesses probably have complex tech stacks as just a normal thing. But then when you layer in that like now every technology suddenly says that they do AI, and then people are grabbing different third-party tools that say they do AI, it just gets more complex and more complex. But when I think about this more so in the enterprise space, in small to medium, I think about this more as a challenge. It's that there's no one leading the charge, especially in SMB, especially in mid-sized organizations. And I think for those types of organizations, marketing is probably where it should come from. If there's no AI leader, if they're not spending thousands of dollars on a consultant that that knows a lot of stuff, I think marketers are in a prime position to sort of rebrand how they deliver value to the business and sort of get on the front foot and drive this forward. So, I want to talk about my journey and the different stages that I went through personally, and then how that's impacted my role and also the business. Before we get into this, like I've probably talked through a few concepts. I just want to get a little pulse around the room of sort of where everyone might be at. So, who uses an LLM at least once a day for a specific use case, like ChatGPT, Gemini, just one of them? Surely most people? No? Okay. Who uses at least two for different use cases because you think that they do different things better than the rest? Every day. Okay. Small portion of the room. Is there anyone in the room who would say that they've built an AI agent and they've implemented it and it's working in production and actually doing a bunch of their work for them? Okay, we should have a beer later. I'm keen to nerd out with you too. That's awesome. But again, I think that represents the stat before. Most people are at the start of this journey. And I don't think that's a challenge. I don't think that's a problem. I think it's probably the single biggest opportunity in the industry today. So I want to talk through these stages because this absolutely reflects how I went through my progression in AI adoption and maturity. And I think this is just a natural way for everyone to think about how they can learn from where probably everyone is at level 1 at the moment. Cool. So the first level is assistant. As I talk through these stages, I might use the example of creating a blog or creating a piece of content. I think that's a pretty relatable marketing task that most people understand, what's involved and how it gets done. So when I met Jamie, when I had that meeting, this is where I was at. I would basically, every now and then, go to a ChatGPT or an LLM and I'd say, hey, write me a blog about marketing analytics and make it 500 to 800 words. It's pretty generic and it's pretty basic, and because of that, the output I was getting was pretty basic and pretty generic, and I'd still have to spend the vast majority of the time I would do writing a normal blog from scratch, still editing and optimizing and getting this thing published to get it live. As I got to understand the technology better and as I went through that session, I started to learn about prompt engineering and adding things like more context and more instructions and giving the LLM a persona and asking for very specific output. And as I did that, my use of AI as an assistant got way more mature, and you would get way more, you get better results and better outcomes from the actual input. So that was sort of the stage 1 of my progression. And as I got better output using AI as an assistant, I started going back more and using it more. And I found that there was many repetitive tasks that I was using it for consistently. So then I thought, why don't I automate this? I could probably go through this process so much quicker. I can have it running on a schedule, and I can get the same sort of value, but in an automated fashion. So then I started toying around with automation. So for me, I would do, let's say, 1 blog a week. So after I got that confidence and I understood prompt engineering and I knew how to give it the right context and ask for the right things back, I then built it into a weekly workflow where a Monday morning at 8 a.m, this automation would run. It would take a keyword from a spreadsheet that I'd done research around SEO for, where I wanted to target specific keywords. It would take a keyword, it would research that topic to find some relevant industry insights and trends, and then it would follow the same prompt that I ingested previously, and then it would send me an email with the draft blog. So instead of just me going on and putting the prompt in, copy and pasting from a Google Doc with a specific topic that I wanted to write about, I was now getting all of that done for me on a Monday morning. When I logged into my computer, it was there for me to start to work on. So even in that step from the assistant to automation, I was saving another hour and a half of work just having it done for me automatically. Similarly, I started to mature this process as well. So a large piece of work after I got that draft and edited it was I'd have to go put it in the website, and I'd have to go add in all the links and do all those sorts of things. So I figured, hey, why can't I just put that in the automation as well? So now when the blog runs and it gets created, it then gets changed to HTML. It gets published in our WordPress website as draft. All the links get embedded, and an image from our approved asset library gets added based off the name and the relevance. So that was stage 2. Stage 3 is agentic. Now, who has heard the word agents, AI agents, or agentic AI? Yeah. At Google yesterday, they said it was the word of the year, but I could not find anywhere that backed that up when I was looking it up last night. But I'm pretty exhausted with this word as well. But this is the buzz, AI agents. This is the next layer. This is the third level of maturity, and this is absolutely doable for everyone in this room today, without a doubt. You do not have to be a developer or a coder or anything to do this. So, for those that don't know what an agent is basically an LLM, but it's got a larger context window, so better memory, and it's got the ability to make autonomous decisions. So it applies logic, and it applies reason to make a decision, to structure a task, and then execute that task in the best way it can. And it's also got access to tools to help it achieve that task and achieve that outcome. So instead of acting as, I guess, one stage within a workflow, it decides what happens at that point and what happens after that stage in the workflow, and then it goes and executes it. So this is an example of an agentic AI system that I've implemented for us. So I didn't mention before, we have a product, it's a customer data platform called Wondrous. And on the content creation and blog trend, this system still follows like a linear pattern where, you know, we're using the AI at a point to generate a blog, but there's way more logic and decision making that's implemented in this flow. So what happens here is the goal is for us to scrape data from Reddit. We're pulling in information whenever there's a keyword, which is composable CDP, the category of our product. Whenever that's mentioned, we pull that thread and the information around what's said around that keyword into this system. And the role of the agent is to do a few things. So it firstly understands the sentiment. So what has been said about composable CDPs? Is it composable CDs are shit? Or is it, what's the best Australian composable CDP that I should buy? So it understands what's being said about it. It understands the engagement. So, you know, is there a bit of community hype in this thread? Is there people talking about it? It understands whether our business has already got content around this topic. And if we don't, it tries to figure out, should we then go and create content around that topic so that we can support that community, engage that community, and publish it. So the role of the AI is to change from just creating a blog to now thinking strategically and making decisions around whether the content should be created, and then actioning that content being created in the same flow. So that's agentic. And again, this is all very doable today. And I'm going to talk through some tools and platforms on how to do it as just marketers, non-technical marketers. I'll just use that term. So then there's the fourth layer, and this is orchestration. And this, still feels pretty crazy when I talk about this, considering 12 months ago I didn't know how to use ChatGPT properly. But orchestration is essentially multi-agentic systems. So you've got one agent that essentially works as the boss, the head, and then you've got a series of sub-agents. Now, going back to the definition of agent, each of these agents has a specific task or a goal they're trying to achieve. They apply logic to achieve their specific goal. They've got tools that support them in achieving their specific goal. And they all work together, but they're all instructed and guided by the head agent. So I'm going on paternity leave in November, and I'm like, this is actually one of my systems I'm building at the moment with the goal of supplying my CEO with a agent that they can interact with that will give them updates on all the performance across our platforms and all the distribution channels, everything, as much as possible. Look, this is not in production yet, but I'm working on it. But if we go back to that content scenario and that blog creation scenario, the way you can think about it is, so we've got the CMO agent here. Let's call her Cheryl. Let's give it a name. Why not? Cheryl, the CMO, she understands our marketing strategy deeply. She's got all of the information around our goals, our channels, everything that we're trying to do as a business and as a marketing team. And she gets analytics and reports from the analyst agent on real-time performance and real-time data. So although we may have a structured plan to go and execute certain things, the CMO agent can actually pivot and make decisions on where we may need to change, a paid media strategy, or where we may need to create new content. And then once a CMO makes a decision, let's say we need to create another piece of content in a certain pillar, she'll go and tell the blog writing agent, whose specific goal is to create high quality content with a specific framework of what that looks like from our business's perspective. They'll create the copy or the content, they'll feed it back to the CMO, who will give it to the social media agent. The social media agent will then draft up all of the posts. It knows what best practice looks like against LinkedIn, Instagram, X, Meta, and it'll generate all the draft posts, send it back to the CMO agent. CMO agent will then pass it to the image generation agent or the video generation agent to get the relevant graphics and creative to support it. And then the CMO passes all that to the executive assistant agent. And the executive assistant agent will put all of that in Jira, link all the drafts. They'll send me an email with all of the links and the drafts, but also why, what's been done and why, the strategic thinking. And then it'll go to my calendar and find 30 minutes where I can go and review this stuff, put a calendar invitation in with the link saying, hey, go and review these assets. Again, this is all very doable now, and I'm doing it now, which is pretty cool. So it's all quite crazy, I'm not going to lie, but I think it's important to say, you do not have to be a developer. I'll keep reiterating that. You do not have to be a developer to do these things now. And again, as marketers, I think we have the opportunity to lead from the front and to drive value back into the business and take advantage of this technology as much as possible. This is a process that I followed throughout this whole maturity journey, which was just identifying something that was repetitive. I needed to optimize my time as much as possible. I just lost my team. I'm trying to achieve KPIs. I'm trying to still drive value for the business. I needed to optimize as much as possible. So I'd find that repetitive task. I'd map out, what were the actual steps? Because you need to map that out to figure out, what role AI plays, what role automation plays in that process. Then what context do I need to give it so that it delivers a good result? And that'll take time. You'll test and iterate and figure out what you actually need to supply in terms of rules, frameworks, previous examples if we're talking about content. And then it's just about building that first pilot, because it's never going to be perfect the first time. You always need to iterate and mature it. You're always going to need to change the context. You're just going to have to change the prompts until you get something that's perfect or as close to perfect as possible. And it's probably important for me to say as well, nothing that I have that's running in an agentic system gets published or gets pushed to a customer unless I touch it. So I still always play an intervention role at the moment to make sure that there's still a layer of human and that everything that gets in front of the customer is going to be correct. This is the toolbox. As a non-technical marketer, this is all you need, in my opinion, to get started, to build your first agent, to move up that maturation cycle. So I personally use N8N religiously, but I also use Zapier. That was that first automation flow you would have seen. All a little bit different, but very user-friendly. You do not need to be able to code. Obviously, then you need your models, which you tap into. Your LLMs all do different things better than the others, but you can integrate those very easily within your engines or your workflow systems. And then you obviously need your business tools. Depending on what you're trying to do, you need to access your business tools. So I've talked a lot about the what and the how. This is the why. So it was 6 months ago that I got my first agent in production for marketing. And since then, it wasn't perfect, by the way, when I first launched it. There's been a lot of iteration and improvements over time. But since then, we've seen a 16.5% increase in net new pipeline generated from marketing. And there's obviously other things that go into that, but I think AI is the number one leading indicator for why that's grown so fast. Since delivering value back to the business through marketing, I was asked to start working into the sales team and seeing where I could optimize their process and start working on agents in their space. So I've implemented 3 agents in the last 3 months. The first one was a researching and prospecting agent, which basically goes and researches a company, a customer, a prospect, and the stakeholders within a business before a meeting. And HubSpot, all these CRMs do this to an extent at the moment, but building it ourselves and building it myself, we can control exactly what it is that we're getting, the level of detail, the information that's relevant for us and our business and our solution, so that our sales reps are geared up and ready for a meeting. The second one was, sales coaching agent. So basically every meeting that they go into gets transcribed, gets put in our CRM, and the sales coaching agent analyzes every sales call transcript. It identifies all of the information that's relevant for our spiced sales methodology, but not only does it input that into the CRM, it also sends back to the salesperson all the next steps that they need to do. What questions do we need to ask next to clarify and qualify this deal and move it forward? Or tells them, maybe this isn't the right fit, we need to get this out of the pipeline, let's not waste any more time on it. And then the third is automated proposal and statement of work generation, so that once a deal is moved into proposal or in contract, a proposal is generated automatically within a minute, and it's completely contextualized to that person and that sales call and that transcript, so that they can get it shot off and move on to the next thing or progress that deal. So each rep has seen 15 hours a week saved, and that's in the last 3 months. That's 60 hours a month per rep that our salespeople aren't doing manual tasks and they're out there selling. We've seen our sales cycle shorten by 31% in that time as well, because our deals are more qualified and they're stronger, or they're getting moved out because they're not the right fit for us. So we just don't waste time on it. So now that I've done this, I've moved in, I've led from marketing, I'm into sales. I'm now getting asked to move across the business. I'm doing customer work, I'm doing delivery work. So that's like my newest project. And my role has changed from head of marketing and marketing journalist who does everything to more of marketing over here and AI architect over there. So hopefully that's some inspiration. 3 things. Always like to leave these things with 3 things. So number 1, find your Jamie. If you find another person who's gone on a 2-year sabbatical to learn about AI, please come and tell me. I doubt you will. But when I say that, I mean just find someone who's curious about AI, who wants to learn. Because I think being able to go on this journey with someone and bounce ideas is a really important thing, because there's so much opportunity and there's so much possibility, and it's good to have someone to keep you accountable and keep you focused as well. And on focus, pick one simple task. Just start with one thing. What's the most repetitive task that you do that's manual, that you can break it down and try and automate and use AI to do so. Just start with one, because once you try and build a system to do one thing, you're going to learn so much, and then that's when the possibilities start rolling. And number 3, just get in and do it. Play with those tools. Most of them are like low code, no code, 14-day free trial. You can just jump in and start playing with them. So why not? Why not get started? Thanks for listening, guys. Please connect with me on LinkedIn if you want to ask any more questions.
Amazing. So good. Thank you, Tim. I think most of you will agree, our brains are built to resist uncertainty because we don't understand it. The brain doesn't like what it doesn't understand. And I think AI, because it seems bulletproof, that we are taught to question. It's a natural curiosity of ourselves to go, we need some more information. So you really broke that down beautifully. So thank you for that. AI worries are real, and brand voice privacy accuracy. As you move from assistant to agent, how did you manage the risk and win leadership's trust?
Yeah, good question. I'll probably break that down into 2 parts. So brand voice, privacy, they're quite different things. Brand voice, I think you can definitely train AI to mirror brand voice very closely. So I think that testing, that iteration process is important to do that. You can actually, if you feed all of your content into AI, it will mold the brand voice for you, and then you can feed that back into an LLM that's going to repeat the content. Hopefully that makes sense. But it's absolutely possible to replicate brand voice. But I always, as I said, I always keep a human interaction within any process or flow or agentic system, just to make sure that I can like double check anything that goes out. So I think that's always like a nice rule of thumb to have, but I think brand voice is something you can replicate with AI for sure. Privacy, that's a different thing. When we talk about, like when I think of privacy, I think about data sharing and use of integration and filtering customer data maybe through an agentic system. That's something you have to work with IT on. I think the important thing, if you've got pretty like strict IT rules and I guess access requirements, it's probably good to just start with that first repetitive task and that first agent on something that's simple and doesn't require a bunch of access. Because it's about proving the process and the concept and the fact that you can actually drive optimization and ROI first. If you can do that without having to access a bunch of customer data or things that maybe are locked by IT, you should hopefully then be able to build the business case to then get the access to then start to do things more broadly. So that's how I'd approach that.
And I think just winning the leadership trust, because maybe someone, again, that doesn't understand AI at all from a senior leadership team, maybe a boomer, we could say that's going to turn around and say, oh, don't use that, that just makes you lazy. You're just going to sit there and twiddle your thumbs on social media whilst the robot does all the work. How do we combat that thought pattern?
Yeah.
Nothing against boomers, they're wonderful, but just...
We love boomers. That's cool.
We love boomers. Our parents are boomers.
Yeah. I think it just comes back, tying it back to the KPIs, the ROI, the business metrics. Like for me, a beautiful example is XPON, like our number one lead generation and new pipeline generation channel is events. And the fact that I'm able to build agentic systems to do a lot of stuff that's not events means I have so much more time to run events, which drives more ROI.
Using your time better.
Exactly. Like an agent can't come in and run an in-person event for me. So if I can get to do the other stuff that's maybe lower priority, I could do more of the high value, high ROI activity. And if you talk about it in that sort of language and those terms back to leadership and executives, they have to listen because they want the business to do well. They want more ROI. They want more revenue.
Using it to your advantage to level up.
Yep.
As AI takes over doing, how does marketing evolve? What human skills matter most to stay ahead and add real value? I know you mentioned before there's always that human connection there, but how do we make sure that we massage that curiosity, creative muscles that we all have, rather than become complacent?
For sure. I think the change in skills, I think we still need to know the core marketing concepts and the principles and all the best practices that we know now, because that's how the AI and the LLMs get trained to do a good job, is because you're able to implement the frameworks and the guardrails around what good looks like to them so that they can produce it for you quicker and better. So I think you still need to know marketing at its core. You still need to have those skills. I think the evolution will be kind of similar to my journey, where we'll all going to know how to use AI better. We're going to all have agents or assistants that work kind of for us, and we need to know how to interact with them and train them and build them and optimize them and work in tandem with them.
Very well said. How do you win over sales? AI can be a hard sell. What cracked the skepticism?
It's actually pretty easy. If you take admin off their plate, sales are usually pretty happy. So that's where I started. I think I actually did start with the researching one, because it's like, they don't want to have to go on LinkedIn and look at this person, and go on LinkedIn and look at this other person, research the business, read the annual report, all that stuff. So if I could just do that for them, summarize it into the key points that they cared about, that's going to save them a bunch of time, and then they buy into it pretty quickly.
Beautiful. There's a lot of talk about AI slop online at the moment, and if we consistently use AI to produce content, can you give us another example of a real-time life example of where uniqueness has come from in your work?
Yeah, it's interesting. AI slop, it's a good question. In terms of like written content, because I think you can break this down into like creative and written and all those sorts of things. I've done a lot of testing and iterating on prompts to try and get something for my personal brand that sounds like me, and it takes so much time. I think there's so much AI slop because people still don't know how to control AI or make it do what they want it to do. Like that AI assistant example where you put in a 10-word prompt and you get a pretty generic output. Most people that are using LLMs and putting stuff into production and putting it out in the world are still doing that. So that's why everything sounds really generic. You can absolutely mold an LLM to produce a certain tone of voice, especially in written copy, with very specific guardrails and guidelines. It just takes time and iteration. And then the creative side, I think that comes down to the technology, and it's amazing where we're at now. Like, if anyone's seen the Google VO3 videos that are popping around, I don't know if I like it or I don't, but it's amazing. Like, you can create beautiful video-generated assets and image-generated assets from AI now. But I think probably the slot problem is the copy and the tone and how it all sounds. Yeah.
I think there's a nod to remind why many of us got into marketing in the first place, why we were pulled to do something like this and not accounting, let's say, or another psychology. There's psychology elements in marketing, but why did you feel pulled to do this? There is still that burning desire to create, to move forward, to push boundaries, and those are the sort of things that don't go away. AI can help, again, what you said, with allowing you to progress in your field. But if creativity brought you there in the first place, it doesn't stop you. In fact, it helps you be better.
Yeah. And I think people can probably find creativity in a few different ways. For me personally, my creativity that I'm finding is in building this stuff. Like, I find this creative. I'm invigorated by it, which is why I'm here talking about it today, because I'm creating an ecosystem that does all of this work, and that for me is exciting. Like, I wasn't doing creative like design or anything previously, so that's not my forte. Like, I like systems, I like automation, all that sort of stuff. So for me, this is creativity, and I enjoy that.
And it looks different for everyone, which is
That's
fantastic. Right. Where would you turn first if you found you needed help with your AI journey? Let's start from square one.
Yeah. You can come talk to me. I'll chat to you for a little bit. Maybe that'll be helpful or not. Honestly, the online, like YouTube, if you look at those tools, I'd start with those tools and then look at the communities around those tools. So N8N, Zapier, they all have online communities with people sharing, systems that they've built or challenges they're facing, just like a normal Reddit thread or a Slack community that you're in, but it's focused around the platform. And I think that's where I've learnt the most. I'm in a couple of N8N communities, other people out there building agents, and like, it's so new. Like, no one that I know knows anything about this personally, so I had to go online and I had to find people that also knew what they were doing. There's a lot of great YouTube content around these platforms as well, and how to build systems. So those would probably be the two places: community forums, YouTube.
And re-educating.
It is re-education. This is so new. All of this stuff is so new.
Brilliant. Have you seen a change or reduction in your website Google rating with majority AI-generated content?
No. We've seen a reduction in traffic, just like most people, from organic search, just based off AI overviews and the whole shift. But there's absolutely been zero difference in the AI-generated content that is at this level now versus what we were doing beforehand.
Great. I'll ask this question. You may have just said it before, but just in case there's one step that you didn't highlight. What was the first step you took 6 months ago in creating your first AI agent for basic marketing needs? So it's probably quite specific there.
The first one that I did, it was a blog. It was that first generation of a blog. It was taking a keyword from a spreadsheet, researching it in Perplexity, in Zapier, and then producing the piece of content, sending me an email. That was the first agent I ever built. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Automation, sorry.
What's the rough time frame for creating your first agent? If I was setting expectations on time spent with leadership, that's a good one. Accounting for what you're up to, how much time would you estimate?
Yep. Again, pick the simplest task you can think of. I think you can do it in Zapier in less than an hour. Yep. In N8N, it probably took me 4 hours to build my first one, but it was much more of a complex flow because I'd already been doing a lot of stuff in Zapier, and yeah, N8N's like slightly harder to use.
Did you find that you fell down a rabbit hole as you were starting off? Were you like, this is quite consuming and I need to break it down into smaller bits in order, or not quite?
No, because following that process, if you find exactly the one thing, that you're going to look at first and you break down the process, just focus on achieving that. I think that saves you from falling down the rabbit hole because, again, there's a world of possibilities. If you start with that process, you should be able to get through the first one.
So don't multitask with AI.
Correct. That's right.
Stick
You're not going to learn it all overnight.
And do it well.
That's right.
Great. And you probably did mention this as well. What platform are you using to automate your content? That was on that slide.
Yes. So I still use Zapier a little bit, but N8N is predominantly where everything runs through. And for those thinking about privacy and IT, like it's all hosted within our company infrastructure. There's a bunch of security and stuff in place. So absolutely doable at scale.
And any more tips on implementing the sales AI strategy? How did you get the sales team on board? I know you did touch on that before, but any more further tips for sales and marketing to be best friends?
It's probably a long conversation we need to have. Whoever asked that, we can talk about that. But in that situation, it was driven from the chief growth officer down into the team. So once he asked me to lean in, the team kind of had to react and work with me. So yeah.
Far out. So helpful, I'm sure you'll agree. Tim Lillyman, everyone.
Thanks.
XPON Technologies. Thank you so much.